Welcome back to Laura Ingraham Reports. We're dealing with a major development that broke late on a Friday afternoon, carrying right into the evening hours. This isn't just another headline. It echoes the classic children's story we all grew up with, the one about the persistent tortoise outlasting the overconfident hare. That same dynamic is unfolding in real time with this story. Recall what Donald Trump said not too long ago during one of his public remarks. He questioned why people were still focused on Jeffrey Epstein, pointing out that this individual had been in the news for years already. He called it unbelievable that conversations continued about this disturbing figure. Well, Donald, the answer is straightforward. Yes, people are still talking about it. And not only that, but the pressure is mounting rapidly, and it's heading straight in your direction. You cannot address or resolve any real issues in a system that's fundamentally compromised. When protections are extended to the wealthy, the influential, and those with strong political connections, that's precisely the environment we see persisting today. Consider the role of the nation's chief law enforcement officer, Attorney General Pam Bondi. Time and again, her actions appear to prioritize selective compliance over strict adherence to legal standards. In recent statements, she emphasized that the department intends to follow the law. She noted that the relevant legislation had passed both the House and Senate just the previous evening, though it awaited a final signature. She reiterated the commitment to uphold those rules while emphasizing the need to protect victims and deliver the highest level of openness possible. It's worth noting the historical parallel here, much like the Watergate era under Nixon, though many argue the current situation involves even greater stakes and complications. Remarkably, it has fallen to members of the same party to drive this forward and demand real accountability. And in this instance, credit where it's due for those pushing back. That approach is fundamentally wrong. We cannot stand by if the Senate attempts to weaken or derail this important measure. Anyone who participates in efforts to dilute it in the upper chamber is actively contributing to the very secrecy and lack of accountability that this push is designed to dismantle. It's regrettable if prominent financial backers or influential figures face discomfort or exposure because of their documented visits to what has been described as an island associated with serious abuse. But Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky has been unwavering in his pursuit of the truth, and his position is solidly grounded. The consequences they face are entirely foreseeable and in many cases justified. A significant number will undoubtedly feel the sting of embarrassment, but for others, the appropriate response goes beyond shame. Real accountability, including the possibility of incarceration for those whose actions crossed into criminal territory. Meanwhile, Trump continues to dismiss and minimize these developments, layering one denial on top of another in what appears to be an ongoing effort to deflect. He has repeatedly framed this as an endless partisan fabrication orchestrated by Democrats. He claims that everything possible was provided multiple times, with additional materials handed over repeatedly, yet critics are never satisfied. He suggests that thousands upon thousands of pages have already been released. But let's be precise here, Donald. The total volume in question reaches approximately 6 million documents. Given past reluctance to release even basic personal records like academic transcripts, that distinction matters. 6 million is exponentially more than mere thousands, and it underscores the scale we're actually dealing with. Representative Thomas Massie remains steadfast and absolutely correct in aligning himself with the victims who have suffered. During a recent press briefing, he made a powerful appeal to his colleagues in Congress. He asked them to pause and reflect personally. What if the person harmed had been your own sister? What if it had been your daughter? When survivors come forward to share their painful experiences, the entrenched powers in Washington are essentially asking the American people to accept an implausible narrative. They're promoting the idea that only 2 individuals were responsible for harming hundreds of victims, that they operated in complete isolation, and that federal authorities have no knowledge of any broader involvement, that no other participants engaged in conduct that could qualify as part of an organized criminal effort. This brings us to the heart of today's breaking development. Trump's upcoming weekend is likely to become extremely challenging. Anticipate a surge of activity on his Truth Social platform as this situation escalates, particularly with key actions scheduled for Monday involving lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Here are the essential details of this urgent update. In a significant and encouraging shift, Congress is now set to gain direct access to a substantial portion of unaltered Epstein-related records from the Department of Justice. Beginning Monday, members of Congress will have the opportunity to examine these unredacted materials in person. According to correspondence reviewed by NBC News, the process will occur at Justice Department facilities. Lawmakers will view the contents on secure computers. No physical documents will be provided for handling. They are permitted to take handwritten notes, but electronic devices of any kind are prohibited inside the review area. Importantly, this access is restricted solely to elected members of Congress. No staff members or aides are allowed to participate or assist. The materials available for review include the roughly 3 million documents that have already entered the public domain through prior releases. However, Justice Department officials have confirmed that their overall holdings exceed 6 million items in total, according to reporting from NBC News. This development follows persistent advocacy from key figures, including Representative Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, and Representative Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California. Both lawmakers, who played central roles in sponsoring the bipartisan legislation that compelled these disclosures, submitted formal requests for access to the complete unredacted versions. Additionally, Democratic members of the House Judiciary Committee had urged an expedited review ahead of Attorney General Pam Bondi's scheduled testimony before that same committee the following week. While this step forward is welcome and represents real progress, it's important to examine the limitations critically. Allowing viewing only on computers without staff support and requiring individuals to sit for extended periods attempting to process millions of pages echoes the problematic practice of dumping enormous legislation on lawmakers with virtually no time for review, like handing over a 1,000-page bill at 11 p.m. the night before a vote. The constraints make thorough examination nearly impossible for any single person working alone under time pressure. This setup raises serious questions about whether it truly fulfills the spirit of transparency or serves more as a superficial gesture to claim compliance while avoiding meaningful scrutiny. In an ideal scenario, all of these records, redacted only where absolutely necessary to safeguard victims' identities, should have been made fully available to the entire Congress much earlier. At the very least, this should have occurred promptly after a court order or legislative mandate provided months of advance notice. Instead, what we're seeing appears to involve coordinated efforts by the administration, including Trump and his chosen Attorney General Pam Bondi, someone who previously served in a close legal advisory capacity, to control the flow of information. They present an image of openness while potentially shielding critical details from full exposure.